Welcome to Unity Talks, where the hiring experts of Dallas-based recruiting firm Unity Search engage in lively discussion with successful business leaders to dissect their careers and how they got to where they are today, the obstacles overcome to reach their success, and steps they've taken to stay at the top of their respective fields. So listen in as we provide you with the thought-provoking conversation and ideas that keep industries moving forward.
And welcome back to the Unity Talks podcast. I'm your host, David Cathy. And if you are watching this online, you can notice that we have had storms all day long here on a Thursday, rainy Thursday in Dallas. So hopefully if you're watching it, that will make it fun. You might see a couple of lightning strikes or something like that. But we are safe and sound inside this studio. And I was just reflecting earlier today, this is season 4 of the Unity Talks podcast, episode 49. So we're about to hit 50 on the next one we record. So we're super thankful for all our guests and everybody that supported us throughout these past 49 episodes. We are equally as excited for our guest today. She is a tax executive in the DFW area, and she is the international president of TEI, which stands for Tax Executive Institute. I'm going to let her explain a little bit about what that is before we jump into the show. Welcome to the show, Sandhya Edupuganty.
Thank you very much, David. I'm happy to be here and really appreciate Unity giving me this opportunity to talk about a vocation that I love and I feel passionate about. TEI, it's been around for 78 years.
Oh, wow.
And it was started by tax executives, hence the name. And, you know, really they found a need for people in this area to engage with each other. Educational offerings, engagement, advocacy. You know, we deal a lot with government agencies as far as, you know, here's what we need from a tax profession as a profession. We share ideas and opportunities and areas of risk with each other. It's an ideal situation, an ideal setup. It's a nonprofit. We have 6,500 members throughout the world.
Wow.
And, you know, you're international president for a year. So you come forth with your ideas of where you see need and opportunity. We have an excellent TEI staff that really looks at, okay, what are the areas of opportunity? Where might there be risk? How are we as members coming forward with engagement and ideas? So.
I love that. That's great. I feel like, you know, we've gone through this whole thing like COVID 4 years ago, right? And I feel like so many things went remote. And I just feel like a lot of people want to get back into networking events in person where they're not just seeing people on a screen because we miss that kind of community and that camaraderie.
Yeah.
And that's Tax Executive Institute is a perfect way to do that for people who are going to build their career.
Yes. I mean, you know, I am fortunate. I've been in this field for over 30 years. And I've been part of Tax Executives Institute for probably close to that.
Oh, wow.
And what I would say is whenever I see my friends, and they're my friends, you know, they're my colleagues, they're fellow executives in various types of industries, but they're my friends.
Yeah.
And you feel so, it's a community, and I think that kind of relationship is hard to get. You know, the trust is there. You understand that they're not trying to sell you stuff. They're just there to share ideas and opportunities and risks and how they've addressed it. So.
I love that. Well, thanks for telling us a little bit about it. You know, a lot of people always say it's who you know, it's not what you know.
Yes.
I kind of feel like it's both.
Yes.
You gotta know people, you gotta network with people, but you also have to be competent in what you're doing in order to grow in your career.
Yeah.
And it's organizations like that help you with your competence because it's keeping you abreast of the latest changes. And it's also an opportunity to network with people. So it accomplishes both of those objectives.
Yeah.
I love that.
And you know, I mean, as an example, it's really an area, an institute that allows a single person can affect change. And there's many examples of where we have, whether it's through advocacy initiatives with various government agencies, or just bringing forth new ideas. It can be in the area of technology. It can be in the area of financial reporting. All of these are industry specific. And so we as members have a better feel for where the need and opportunity is. And when we put it forward to the staff, they make it happen for us.
Oh, that's awesome. So if you are young in your career or you're seasoned in your career, either way, and you want to get out and network and you want to establish a new career trajectory, let's say, or just network in general, you should look into Tax Executives Institute.
Thank you.
All right, so let's talk about you. How in the world did you end up in accounting? And then tax of accounting, which people are like, oh, tax, that seems kind of boring, right?
Well,
to the general public, it could.
Yeah.
But you kind of think otherwise.
You know, when I was young, I didn't necessarily decide right then and there, going into college, what I wanted to be. With a lot of gentle encouragement from my family, I chose accounting. And so I started, and I did well in accounting, but it wasn't anything at that point that excited me necessarily in the bachelor's program. When I did my master's, I started with specializing in accounting and with a focus in tax. And I had a practicing tax attorney who taught the subchapter C section, the 3 series. And what happened there, and corporate tax in general, can be pretty dry if you look at the code and regs. Mm-hmm. He made it so interesting because he put forth case law and, specific cases in tax that he had worked on, and it was a matter of problem solving. His push to us was, okay, what are the issues here? How do you need to think through it? And how would you how would you solve for this, so to speak? Mm-hmm. So it made it interesting because it opened up the whole code and regs, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But then you had to fine tune and figure out how to address that challenge. And that's what interested me in tax.
Yeah. Well, and I think you can apply that to really any functional field of work, right? An outsider looking in who's a novice is just like, I don't know, that seems that interesting. But then when you get in it, you find all these nooks and crannies within that field. And it doesn't mean that something is better than something else. It's just you get to grow where your feet are planted. It's like you referred to it the other day as a puzzle. Mm-hmm. That you're figuring out all the pieces to the puzzle and you get to design it and then continue to learn that the puzzle grows more.
And one thing I would say about tax, it's a very specialized field. You do have to do a lot of, whether it's research or just keep up with changes in tax law and regulations. And if you work for a company that's a multinational or operates in all of the U.S., you have to understand how the rules change and apply them in a timely manner. But having said that, what I say, whether it's to myself or my team, is we're a cog in the wheel. Tax does not drive the bus for a company, but it can certainly make it careen off the road, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So we have to be proactive. We have to be right there with the business. And so how do we effectively partner with the business? How do we make sure that we speak in a manner that's plain and clear and easy to understand? Do I know a lot of tax code and reg? For sure, as do most tax professionals. But having said that, does anyone else want to know it? Do they have a need to know it? So it's a matter of, understanding the question that's asked, understanding how to address it, what steps one needs to go through to address the issue. Yeah. And then speaking to it effectively. Yeah. Because if we can't engage with the other person, it doesn't help us be effective.
It's funny. So you're the person who taught that to you when you were in your master's program. I relate that back to recruiting, which is what Unity does and what I've done for years. I always loved positions to try to find people who they had the uncanny, and I say uncanny because not everybody can do this. Yeah. They had to speak finance and accounting language to non-financial people. Yes. So a general manager of a plant, let's say, like he doesn't understand the P&L and how the impacts of certain things, components in his P&L impact the decisions he makes for running this giant plant in an organization. And certain people have to be able to speak that language. They have to understand it and speak it. And you're right. I mean, that's even more so from your major cog in the wheel when you're in taxes to how the organization can move forward.
Yeah. We tend to get pretty tunnel vision. I'm guilty of it as well. I think as you kind of grow in your career, you realize, well, you know, you're really kind of there to serve. You're there to serve the business. You're there to serve your employer. You're there to address risks. You want to be compliant, but you can't be Dr. No. We do have a tendency to say no to a lot of things. I think it's a matter of understanding, well, is there any leeway? Or it is my responsibility as a tax professional to address all of the issues, lay it out clearly for the other person who's asking the question. And ultimately, sometimes it's they who will decide which avenue to take. So it's not for me to say no, it's for me to say, well, here's the issue and here's what the implications are of addressing it in different ways.
You know what's so interesting? I'm still hanging on this topic. I'm like, okay, David, I got to move on, but this is really good because it's making me think from a broader perspective. I feel like as you move along in your career, whether it's tax or recruiting or an attorney or a doctor, you realize that you are advising on risk. Often you're not telling people you have to do this. Yeah. You're letting them make the decision. From a recruiting standpoint, it's like, hey, Mr. Client or Mrs. Candidate, you know, you could do that, but here are some risks associated with that. That person could be a good fit, but here's what we understand about them. When you're an attorney, that's what you're doing. You're advising. Doctor, same thing. And I feel like there is time in the saddle of someone's career of just being there and seeing so much that they want to. That is, you talked about making it, he made it so interesting. Yeah. Advising people on risk, it to me is a really interesting component of the job.
And it's necessary too. Yeah. I mean, you know, I get excited about tax. You know, I want others to reach out to me and ask the questions. I'm currently at a job, as with many other companies, where, you know, when they want to expand into new jurisdictions, they call us up because, you know, my guidance to my team is we're not going to say no. We're going to understand the issue. We're going to look into it and see what we can do. Sometimes the answer is ultimately no, but we're not driving the bus here. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Sandhya. So there's a saying, often more is caught than taught. And we see that in parenting situation and in our work situation, personal and professional lives. How or what have you learned from others, whether you've caught it from others or you were taught, that have helped you progress in your career?
You know, whether it's successes that others have had or challenges that they've had to face and address, or from my personal situations as well, I think a lot of times you look at characteristics that others display and you decide, is this a characteristic that I want to emulate, or is this something that I want to move away from? There are a lot of people who I look at and I admire for the way they are, and those are the characteristics that I want to emulate. Does that mean it totally changes you as an individual? No, but I think there's always an opportunity for self-improvement. What I say in the tax field, our business is constantly changing. It's pushed to change. It has to change because the times are changing. So what makes us think that we can be same old, same old? You know, you have to look at whether it's a mentor that you find. You have to seek out people that make you a better professional, a better individual in how you relate with others in your work setting. And that's the type of environment that I seek.
Yeah. You know, there's two things that I'm going to pull on that thread that you had talked about. One of them is, you know, just because you're observing someone and someone's always watching, right? Like your kids are always watching you. Next thing you know, your kids say a word. You don't want your kids to say a word, and it's because they got it from you, you know, and at work as well. And sometimes you can learn, as you had indicated, like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And you learn and you implement and you modify your style because you are running away from what you've observed. Maybe it was a former boss, or maybe it's just someone from a department that you've seen from a distance. But I really love when people observe good things and they just really try to line their internal core values.
Yeah.
And so I think for leaders, they have to constantly be aware that their mannerisms and what they say and how they treat people, by doing that, they may not be verbally training the next generation of leaders.
I agree.
But they are training the next generation of leaders.
You know, I mean, and to me, a leadership, you don't become a leader just because you have 5 or 10 years of experience. You might manage people. Leadership
Good distinction.
is a different quality, and someone with no experience can exhibit leadership traits. I think the point is, you know, I ask myself, recently I've been asking myself, are you trying to lead with grace? You know, to me that's hard to always do. And I think that's the point. How do you make the other individual feel about a situation or an issue? And because ultimately you want to move towards something better and help everyone move towards something better. And the way you try to channel that behavior, I think you can go one of two ways.
Yeah. Well, you know, you said that the other day when we were talking. You said, you know, something I've really been pondering a lot now is thinking about leading with grace. And like, it was the perfect moment to say that to me. Hopefully it's the perfect moment to, whenever someone's listening to this podcast, it hits them, because it hit me perfectly on Tuesday. Because I was like, those are the words I needed to hear in that moment on that day. And in fact, I told one of our associates today, I was like, well, hey, listen, you know, I heard someone tell me the other day, you know, you have to really think about leading with grace. And she just stopped dead in her tracks earlier today. And she goes, that's what I needed to hear, you know, and that's such an impactful way. Now, aligning your behavior with that on a day-to-day basis is so dang hard to do.
Yes. Situations make it difficult. People make it difficult. Sometimes you're just not there.
Yeah, so hard to do. Okay, so 2 things. You mentioned mentor, and we chatted about it on the same call the other day. Like, that's a heavy word to place. Someone who says, who hears the words, I'd like for you to be my mentor, or however it comes about. Like, the person that receives that comment, they should feel that that's heavy, because it is heavy. Tell me your thoughts on that.
So I've been fortunate where at a previous employer, we had a formal mentor-mentee program. And we would participate in these programs. You know, typically I was in a mentor capacity. But to me, when you're a mentor, you also have the opportunity and need to learn from everyone, including the mentee group, because everybody brings something to the table. And it's a matter of being open to listening. So it is a heavy responsibility. I don't think one should take it. I would clarify that it is a big responsibility, but it's not one where you know, it's a badge of honor only if you always live up to it. You know, it's not anything where you come from a place of arrogance. You have to come from a place of responsibility.
Yeah, if someone asks you to be that, you should first be humbled.
Yes.
Like, oh, wow, okay, I cannot believe this person asked me this. I'm honored to do that. And, you know, I feel like that may get you in line. Like, I've got to start not only telling them, I've got to speak truth into them, and I've got to execute on what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I'm always surprised when people ask me to be a mentor. I'm like, me?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and you said it wasn't necessarily a mentor-mentee, I don't think, relationship, but you had once indicated that someone had said, you know, gave some advice about treating your employees along the lines of, you know, is it equality? Is it fairness? Tell us a little bit about that and how you view that.
You know, again, it's like a lightning bolt moment. There was, every situation, every job, you can have situations where there are HR challenges. And I was in a situation where I was having concerns over an employee. And this HR manager, she had the best poker face. I never quite knew what she was thinking.
Yeah.
She and I became such good friends, someone I really trusted. And when I was going through this experience, her point to me was, you treat everybody fairly. That does not mean you treat everybody equally. And that really hit home because every situation is unique. And you cannot put everybody in the same category. You have to look at every situation for what it is and then treat it as fairly as you can. Now, fair does not mean good, that the outcome is going to be good, but you have to be able to live with the fact that you made a decision that affects someone else's life in addition to your teams and yourself. But was it the right call?
Yeah, that's
Given all
such
the
good
facts.
advice. I love that. I love that. Okay, so I said this earlier. An outsider looking at tax is like, oh my gosh, like how do you know where these numbers go on this form? That's what we think of. We think of a form that you have to fill out, right? The compliance function. But in everybody's career, there's a component of it that's like, oh, that's kind of boring. I don't necessarily want to do that, right?
Yeah.
How do you, or how would one go about like, hey, this is how you not become bored or stay bored in your career? What should that person do?
What I would say is, as a tax professional, do you need to have the foundational knowledge of what it means to be in a particular area of tax? No tax person knows everything that there is to know. That's just impossible. And anyone who thinks that, we should probably have a conversation because I'd love to know how they got there. But what I would say is, yes, you need the foundation. It needs to speak to you in a way, but then there's so much opportunity to make it so fun because you're helping the business. I've had managers tease me saying, oh, you think you're a profit center and not a cost center. I'm like, of course we are a profit center because we can improve the effective tax rate. We can reduce your cash taxes in a manner that, is under the law and that we choose to, a path we choose to go down. So it can be fun. The business is expanding. That means the company is growing. Well, how are you right there helping them be proactive? Because guess what? As a tax function, especially if you're in a public company, you're audited every quarter. You get a report card every quarter. You are audited by government agencies. So tax always gets a report card. And so, how are we being effective, efficient? But how are we taking the mundane out of our job? That's where you look at, okay, what is my process? Don't focus on the trees. Look at the forest.
Yeah.
Make sure you understand the lay of the land, and then how do you go about tackling it to make it more efficient? Because it can be fun. I mean, tax is fun.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and so let's talk to specifically the audience of, let's call it a 5-year person listening to this right now. So they're 5 years into their career, and I have a tendency to call those people climbers who are trying to climb that corporate ladder. Though today I read something where it's like, it's not necessarily a corporate ladder because the ladder goes straight up and down. It's more like a jungle gym, which I liked. I thought, oh, that's really true because you're going up, sideways, down, all over the place. And that's what our careers end up being. So you're a 5-year person in tax and you want to grow. And you feel like I'm just doing compliance and filling out forms.
Yeah.
What does that person need to do? What do they need to do to their manager or their leadership team or their peers? Like, what are the action steps they need to go through?
Seek out different areas of tax, right? Not every area of, with tax, the tax life cycle, so to speak, there's tax planning, there's tax reporting, tax compliance, and tax audits. So, compliance is one aspect of tax. And so seek out different areas. As a young professional, you have the ability to move around and do different things before you pigeonhole, so to speak, into a particular area. It makes you able to ascend to a VP of tax role if you have that varied experience, because a good tax professional knows to identify the issue. That doesn't mean we know the answer immediately to all issues that are out there,
Okay.
but you have to be able to identify the issue. Well, how do you identify the issue if you've only specialized in one area of tax?
That's right.
So move around, pivot. You
Yeah.
have to be able to pivot. There's so many things I wish I had done differently when I was younger. And so my advice to anyone out there is try it. Try
Yeah.
something new.
Yeah. So, okay, so I'm gonna flip to the other side of that coin. You're a leader. I heard this the other day and I thought, man, that really resonated with me. They were talking about hiring someone. And they said, one of the things that I've learned about hiring someone, and I've never gone away from this, is I want to hire someone where I don't have to push them to do something. You know, they're just doing it. I'd rather pull someone back, like, whoa, let's come back into the fold here, instead of constantly every day trying to push someone new.
Yeah.
So as a leader, with all the people that you've managed in the past and led in the past in their career, do you wish that, man, I'd really love someone to just come knock on my door and say, I want to do this,
Yes.
and they're proactive in their
Yes.
career?
Yes. You have to own your career. When I look for talent, aptitude is very important, the ability to do stuff. Attitude, equally important. I have seen, and I've worked with professionals who tend to be very regimented. And to me, that's not a good thing. Is tax pretty specific? Are the rules sometimes right there and those are the rules? Of course. So yes, you follow that. But if you don't understand, like when the business is expanding, FP&A and accounting doesn't say we're not going to follow and we're not going to change and we're not going to adapt. IT doesn't say we're not going to adapt. So who are we as tax professionals to say that we're not going to adapt? So I think the point is you have to always be open to change. That doesn't mean you're a pushover. That just means you are open to opportunities, because a lot of times opportunities come your way when you're least expecting it and when you show that you have the right attitude.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so that is a perfect segue into this question. So, Sandhya, you're gonna have a coffee with your younger self. What do you tell yourself?
I wish I had tried different things. I wish I had done a stint abroad. I wish I had specialized in different areas of tax. Do I have a career and a progression that I'm proud of? Of course. Do I feel like there's a lot more to learn? For sure.
Yeah.
But, try something different. Don't be afraid to try it.
Yeah.
And tax is not scary. We're a friend of the business.
I think that's so good. Sometimes we get so far down this line in our career that we're like, well, I can't do anything else right now. I mean, this is the path I'm on, and but that's not necessarily the case. You can look left and look right or go backwards. I mentioned this on the last podcast that I think that I was on. People see the top of the summit and they're like, I want to go up there. And oftentimes people don't notice, there's switchbacks, there's valleys, there's dark days, there's storms, but then there's a light somewhere at the end of the tunnel.
The journey is just as important as the, destination.
Absolutely.
You cannot focus on the destination, because then you're not enjoying the journey, you're not growing through the journey. What I would say to anyone who's a young professional or in college, tax is a very lucrative area. It's so specialized that
That's
you have
the key.
to have the training.
The more niched you are, the more specialized you are, the higher the dollar value is. That's just the way it is, because there's so much more value, and that candidate pool gets smaller and smaller, right? And that's why there's a higher dollar value related to it.
But it's worth the effort. I mean, it's not as expensive to become a tax professional as it is to become, say, a tax lawyer. And to me, there's certain areas of tax where anymore it's more important to know. ASC 740 is one of those areas. And so, again, understanding what's out there and the opportunities, and how to seek people and get feedback from people who've been there, done that, I think is kind of key.
Absolutely. Okay, final question as we wrap this up. Talk to our audience about tomorrow. Tomorrow, what can someone do to change the trajectory of their career?
You know, what I would say is, regardless of where you are in your career, I mean, even if you're 30 years into it, there's always an opportunity to affect change. You know, everything around you is changing. The younger you are, the more, the broader the areas of opportunity that you have. Don't be afraid. It's okay. I've learned the most from the mistakes I've made versus the successes that I've had. So again, I think it's all good. You just need to try it.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's fantastic. You know, in the fields that we work on at Unity, we spend all of our day on the back office functions. So it's accounting, it's finance, it's tax, it's human resources, it's technology.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people who do that for their career, they're generally more risk averse. And so it's not necessarily in our nature.
Yeah.
But you just heard it from someone who's been extremely successful in their career. It's like, man, be willing to, you know, take a big gulp and take on more risk.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, anybody who goes into one of these fields, especially tax, because we've talked about, you're smart enough to recover. And if you're networked, like at TEI, you've got people there that will support you through that if it doesn't work out.
Yes.
Right?
No, for sure. The one clarification I would make, David, is I would say we're not back office. We are the safety net for the business.
Oh, that's really good.
We are the safety net
like
for
that.
the people who want to move forward in a particular area. We provide the fallback.
Yeah,
You
I
know?
really like that. That's a really good perspective. I hadn't heard that before. That's good. I love that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on Unity Talks. Again, our 49th episode, season 4. And Sandhya, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate and I really value this opportunity.
Absolutely. So we will be back in 2 weeks with episode number 50. And until then, we'll see you down the road.
If you're looking for the next step in your career or the missing piece for your team, Unity Search has you covered. Whether it's finance and accounting, tax services, information technology, or human resources, Unity Search is here for you with experienced and dedicated hiring professionals. Reach out today and take the next step. Unity Search, placing you first.